I was at St. Hilary's Church, in a Catholic church, and I was sitting there by myself early in the morning. I told the Lord, if you wanted to use me, I said, I want you to use me. But don't use me in a small way. I want them to see your power, and that truly that you are a God that's alive. I said, if you're going to use me in a mighty way, then give me a sign. I said, the only sign I want is to see your face, and then I'll know that I have been commissioned. So I went to work. That night I come home, and in the middle of the night, I hear him call me, and he said, look. I heard it, and I thought, well, it must be my mind. Then a second time he said, look this way. And of course I looked and saw nothing. Then the third time he says, come to me. I got up and went towards the kitchen, and there his face I could see. But it wasn't a black and white or a shadow or a smudge on the wall. It was his face 3D. I could see every hair on his face. It was beautiful. And as I looked at him, I with amazement, I was reminded that that is exactly what I asked, to see his face. You know, when the Lord told me that with a visitation that he had with me, and that was for 2.5 hours, he said, I'm now going to sanctify you, consecrate you, separate you, so that you can have the authority to be under my glory. At the time I didn't understand, but as I began to flow with him and work with him, he began to say that he was going to build a ministry in my life. And I began to see some powerful healings and deliverances and words of knowledge that were just unbelievable. And I want to share some with you, and if I can, and a few. And one of them was when a woman that I was trying to get a job with, and in the midst of that I told her about her mother who was in, I said, there's someone that's laid up on a bed, and her legs are like with elephantitis. And she began to weep and say that her mother called her that morning and said that she was at the doctor's in Hawaii with elephantitis legs. And I said that God was going to heal her, and he did. Another one that just comes to mind was I was going to go get gas at a gas station, and there was this van next to me, and there was an elderly man that was there, and I could hear him groaning, and he called out to me kind of abruptly and said to take his $3 and to pay for his gas. And inside of me I wanted to say something like, oh, well, doesn't he have legs? Let him do it. But God stopped my mouth, and I just said, okay, and I went and paid. When I got back, he was out there with crutches, and I noticed that his leg looked quite gnarly through his pant, and he was putting gas as I was putting mine. And I told him what's wrong with his leg. He said, well, he just got to the doctor. They'd done all that they can do, and the next thing that they're going to do that was scheduled for the following week was surgery to amputate. I just said to him, could he believe for God to heal him? He said he already went that route. He's gone to many places, and I said, well, God can heal you. And he said, well, I said, what do you have to lose? And he told me, a leg. And I said, well, let's not lose the leg. Let's pray. He got back in his van. I laid hands on his leg, and within a minute, as I began praying, I told him, let your crutches go. Get out of your van. He gets out, and unbeknownst to himself, he was not groaning, and he was moving about unbelievably like as two new legs. He began just yelling out and holding me, and he says, you don't understand. It's not only that my leg was hurting. He said, my joints were all fused. I can now move my knee, my ankle, and this is where God was showing me what he said at 14, that he was going to use me in the miracle healings. Let me tell you about one more story. This happened in Las Vegas while I was there doing some R&R. I love swimming and snorkeling, and so I wanted to check out the pool. And I told my wife at the time, I'm going to go down and check it. And as I was doing so, I was on the 14th floor, and at the 7th floor, it stopped, because I do know that the pool was in the 3rd floor. So at the 7th floor, this couple came in, and as they walked in there, I began to pray, because they looked disheveled. And I said, well, I'm by myself here, and I just asked the Holy Ghost to protect me. And as the door shut, I can hear her saying to him, you will never do this to me again, and I hate you. And all of a sudden, on the 4th floor, it opened, and they just walked out. So when the doors closed, I forgot to, I don't know why I forgot to hit the 3, and I went down to number 1, and I walked out. When I walked out, I noticed that right next to me was the couple that left on the 4th floor. You know, the most amazing thing is I was just, in a sense, confused. I said, wait a second, am I on the 4th floor? Am I on the 3rd floor? You know, but something happened. And as I looked at them, I looked at the gentleman and I said, well, wait a second, I just left you up on the 4th floor. He said, yeah, I know. We both looked at it like something, but then all of a sudden a word of knowledge came in me, and I looked at him and I said, for thus saith the Lord. I said, God says that He has sent me as a messenger to tell you that you will not take your life, and that He loves you. He began to weep, and he told me, last night I beat my girlfriend to a pulp. I locked myself into the bathroom, and I said to God, God, if you by tomorrow morning do not send somebody to let me know that you're real and that you love me, I will commit suicide. So the words that I gave him were right from the throne room of God, because God did love him. And I said that He sent me to tell you He loved and that you will not take your life. See, that to me is ministry. That to me is the visible presence of God I call Theophany. I'm amazed how God has turned my life around. From a young boy who was deformed and with such miracles of Him healing me, to wanting to sing for the world and thinking that I was going to do such, and He took that for Himself. But more than all, how He offered me a ministry. How He spoke and said it would be throughout the world, and that I would lay hands on the sick and that He would heal. And it's the most amazing thing. Whatever He spoke is exactly what happened and what is happening. He even said, I'm going to name your ministry, and it is Desert Bloom Ministries. And I even told him, I don't want that name. But he said, go to Isaiah 35, and your ministry will have its character, and that's what it will be. And as I read it, he says, the blind will see, the deaf shall hear. And it says, in that solitary place, that the desert shall bloom like a rose, and they shall be glad for it. And you know, I'll tell you, above all things, have God be before me, and to see throughout the world, if I've gone to South Africa and many places around the world, to see the theophany, God's presence, is to me the blessing. And if I had to do it all over again, you know, I would do it. To get what I got today, the more of Him, I do it. So you know what I do? I share with all of you. If you want more, just ask Him. He'll give it to you.